let's have a chat about this down-to-earth and grounding blue. This is a paint color you really need to know about because it's beautiful, it's elegant, and not exactly as popular as I think it should be. It's by the company Farrow and Ball, and it's called Nimes. And a color nerd like me, I just can't help but be amused because the color is, I believe, named after the French city Nimes, but also kind of looks like denim. Denim? Is it just me or am I crazy? Anyway, this video is all about this paint color, but also it's about inspiring you to think of it in the context of other colors. So I'm gonna tell you all about Nimes, and then I'll go into some other Farrow and Ball colors that I picked to pair with it. That way, if you're considering this beautiful blue for one room or maybe a few others, you'll get some ideas for the rest of your house as well. And also don't forget about those two trim colors that I'll give you at the end of the video, because your baseboards and your woodwork, they also require some awesome paint colors to really finish off the job. The only job I ask of you is to press that like button for me and maybe share this video with some of your friends who are perhaps into painting and decorating, because we do 6 videos a week on it. Crazy. I find Nimes to be a subtle evolution of your classic dark navy blue. You don't even need to look outside of Farrow and Ball's catalog by checking out Hague Blue, for example, which I believe is one of their best-selling blues ever. Maybe is the best-selling. Compared to that, Nimes feels a little bit lighter, a bit more fresh, I would say. It also feels more like a tone of blue that has been enriched with dark gray versus a shade of blue that has been blackened, which Hague Blue kind of gives you that impression. And whenever I'm analyzing a color, I really find it useful to check out a color's light reflectance value, which sounds complicated to the people that are perhaps new to the channel and paint in general. It's just a number that lets us know how much light a color reflects on a percentage basis. So if a color is approaching 0, that means it's getting darker and closer to black. And then the opposite is true. The closer a color is to 100, the more it'll appear light or even white at the highest level. Farrow and Ball, kind of a bummer though, because they don't really advertise this all-important number to the general public. So we just need to make our best guess as so-called experts. Honestly though, if I were to guess, I would say Nimes sits around maybe a 20 LRV, which means it'll reflect about 20% of the light that hits it. That's not a lot, but it's a lot more than some of those darker navy blues we all seem to be using these days. The added lightness isn't gonna make a huge difference to the extent that this color is going to feel like an off-white or anything. It still has a ton of richness as a color. It's pretty saturated with blue and even a hint of green as well. But because it's reflecting more light, this means it will be that much more forgiving in the spaces that perhaps don't have a ton of windows or are maybe smaller and more closed in. This is a color that comes to life when illuminated. But even in those more dimly lit, darker rooms, you can still get a pretty grounded, attractive, cozy feeling from Nimes. As a general rule though, a color this dark, I wouldn't think of it as a #1 option for the main color in a home, especially ones with like 2-story hallways or whatnot. Probably not my first choice. You might be able to get away with Nimes in an open condo that has tons of windows, aka not very much wall space. But for the most part, this is a color that shines in the smaller pockets of your home. A lot of the examples you'll see online are places like bathrooms, maybe bedrooms, but even some sitting areas and some dining rooms. It's also a phenomenal color against pretty much any type of natural wood. So if you have a lot of that in the form of your furniture, especially your flooring, this color is gonna look wonderful. All right, let's go right into some color pairings because I have a nice little variety for you to start with. First is light blue. That's the name of the color. And even though the name seems like it's very obvious as to what it is, I feel like light blue is more like a mid-tone silvery blue-green. The undertones themselves are pretty subtle, and I think the color does fit in a more neutral place, especially against Nimes. You could default it as the primary color of the palette, assuming that you're purposely going into that cooler wall color direction, which is perhaps maybe a little more progressive, a little more contemporary, but I think it could look really sleek. And also, just because the wall paint you use happens to be blue or green, it doesn't mean the overall space will then feel cold. It also depends on what else is in that room, namely your furniture and especially that flooring. That's what's gonna help carry the overall color scheme, not just what you decide to paint your walls with. It all depends on the space. For those of you that are craving a little bit more warmth, my second color is stony ground, which is potentially the warmest color of the bunch, but it doesn't take things into an extreme like gold direction or something. It's funny though, because Farrow and Ball describes this as a strong neutral, which to me is kind of an oxymoron, but I do get it, kind of, because it does have a very slight undertone that is not visually apparent to a lot of people, but it does have some richness because it's a darker mid-tone paint color. So technically it's not really that bold, but it has a lot of depth, so strong neutral. All right, let's take it. What's great though is this color can help compensate for the other cool colors by bringing in that other side, that warmer side, for a little more variety. The third color is a slight wild card, but I do have a fondness for it. It's the color that never makes me sulk, sulking room pink. Honestly, this color, it's a bit of a dusty rose, but I do love its classic edge, where it almost feels like there's a bit of a faint brown red brick coloration in the background. I think that rosy aspect is just present enough to have it feel like an accent color that you can use in more than one type of room. You get any more pink than this, and then I think your options start to get a little more limited. But I'm also a fan of how this color looks with blues like Nimes. It's a great color pairing, and if you're willing to take that little risk, I think the payoff could be huge. As for your trim colors, I have two options for you that you can look at. The lighter choice is called Shadow White, which actually does feel like a white that's kind of in the shadows. But seriously, it's pretty much a very light green gray. But don't let the green spook you, because it's subtle and it's going to coordinate really well with the other wall colors we talked about. The simpler slash boring choice would just be to go with all white, which is kind of your crisp, no undertone white, but please resist the urge to do that because, come on. That's if you want something really clean and crisp and bright, but you don't always have to default to that. But if you want to, you can. My dark trim color choice is only a bit darker than Nimes, and it's called Inchira Blue. And I just love the little baby step of depth between these two colors. Normally, I do feel that having noticeable contrast between your walls and your trim is the way to go, but these two together just feel really cool to me. No pun intended. Here's the palette all together. Let me know what you think. And Inchira Blue also made my underrated colors list, which is right over here. These are paint colors that you need to know about because I don't think they get the love that they deserve. They do for me.